Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today I wanted to do a bit more of like a free form type of video, just commenting on something that I noticed. And I think in the spirit of Halloween, I think the idea of fat suits is something interesting to talk about. I was watching the Hidden Channel. The Hidden Channel covered ProfBrainFever's TikTok, basically, over the past year. She did her year in a TikTok series on him. Almost every single video he had was about fat suits. And I find it to be really interesting because you would think that they would be somewhat happy of there being representation or whatever, And I understand there's certain movies out there like Shallow Hal, for example. Even The Whale, I can kind of get why there was such an issue with The Whale. The only thing that I will say when it comes to The Whale is Brendan Fraser is fat. Like, he's legitimately fat. So I'm like, I don't understand. Like, they do this whole thing where everything is like, oh, we're appropriating fat culture. Like, they almost make this pseudo argument in that type of vein, but it's like, what if the person's actually fat? Then it becomes, they're not fat enough to play the role. And then Professor Brain Fever was literally asked about it. Like, well, what do you do if you want to make a story about somebody who's 600 pounds? And he basically gets to the point where he says, like, if you can't get an actor that is 600 pounds to do it, then just don't make the movie at all. And it's like, it's just so weird. It's such a weird ask to be like, I want this representation, but I only want it in this way, and I only want it with this amount of fatness and this amount of people, and if you can't do it otherwise, then just don't be a part of it at all. Like, then don't do it at all. So it's like you're literally reversing your own argument. You're saying you want representation, then you say you don't. Then you say this is good or bad representation. The thing is, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to art, when it comes to movies, people are going to make movies about things that inspire them. And they're going to talk about it. I've written a story that comes from the perspective of somebody struggling with weight. I don't write anymore. I gave up. I quit. The holy sin of writers is to quit. And I did. And to be honest, I'm actually really happy with my decision to quit. Because I realized I'm more of a speaker, and I just like YouTube a lot more. I like talking more than writing. Writing was more of a precursor for me. But regardless, I've written stories with fatness as an element in the story because I'm very fat, and I have been for a very long time. And so I was able to do that, but then they say they want somebody fat, but then they want you to not write anything about the fact that they're fat, which is odd. It's an odd thing. I had one character, she was struggling to lose weight, and she had BED, and I wrote about a relapse episode and what that's like and what it feels like and just everything about it. It's actually probably one of the best things I've written, to be honest, even to this day, because I really captured that. And I don't think there's a lot of people that have written about it. But anyways, and the other one I wrote about was just the frustration and the reality of it. It's like, this character, she was very into, it was a female character in my story, but she was very into the FA talking points, and I just need to eat this way to do my diet. I just need to eat normal, and if I just eat normal, then my body will normalize, and then I'll just be the weight that I'm meant to be. And, she has all these talking points in her head, and she's using them as weapons against people who are pointing out the fact that she's eating so much. And she goes to a gay bar with her gay best friend or whatever, and he's just like, he's being hit on all the time because he's thin, and then she's never hit on. And it's like she has this weird feeling about it, the whole thing. It's like this inconsistency of like, this is what I tell myself, but this is the reality of the situation. And the whole reason his friend brought her to the gay bar was because he said she didn't like being around, you know, the patriarchal oppression of straight men or whatever. So it's like she goes there, she's upset that nobody's hitting on her, but she's at a gay bar, but she's only there because her friend is trying to be considerate of her. You know, I kind of captured some of those aspects of that type of thing. But it's like, that's not something that they're going to like. They're going to look at something like what I wrote, which I should probably share my stories on here. Let me know if you guys are interested in that, my fat stories. But they're not going to be interested in that because it doesn't necessarily, like, the way that I wrote about it, it was very, like, guttural and emotional and all these things, you know, and also, like, very real. But they would say that's bad representation because it's not painting it in a way that they want it to. Ultimately, at the end of the stories, both of the stories that I'm talking about, the ultimate struggle was about the struggle of eating. One of them coming to terms with it at the end, and the other one coming to terms with the fact that she eats a lot. And she understands why she's fat, because she eats a lot. And I think a lot of people don't always understand. That's a huge barrier to understanding why this happens, why we're in this position. But I just find it interesting to sit here and demand representation, but it's like they demand propaganda. I think someone like Professor Brain Fever, he demands propaganda. You don't demand representation. You don't want there to be any actual representation of what it's like to be fat, because it isn't pretty. It's awkward at best. It involves a lot of eating and, you know, a lot of excuses and stuff, or emotional issues, or a lot of that kind of stuff. That's a lot of what being fat is. I don't know how to tell you that, Professor Brain Fever, but it's a huge part of it. And to act like it isn't is ridiculous. But I think the other thing I want to touch on of why I think this is such an issue for someone like Professor Brain Fever and for fat acceptance in general is that fat suits really graphically reinforce the idea that a fat person can lose weight and that a thin person can gain weight. There is a fat acceptance folklore that it is not possible, that you can't really change. They will acknowledge that a thin person can become fat, but they don't like to talk about it. Like, I've seen them squirm on it. Like, Aubrey from the maintenance phase, she kind of touches on it sometimes, but she always, like, quickly moves past it. It's like, well, sometimes people can gain weight. Like, it's kind of like that. It's like, and then she just, like, quickly, like, throws it under the rug and, like, buries it. Because they want so desperately to make it into a racial issue or a sexuality issue. They want so desperately for it to have this sort of inalienable quality to it. And even something like sexuality, it's debated by a lot of people. I definitely believe you're born gay or whatever, or bi or whatever. There are a lot of people that question it, you know, but something like race, I mean, you just can't even question it. But they want it to be, that's why they attach it so much to race more so, just because there's no debate. The only time they will connect it with gayness is when they're comparing weight loss to conversion therapy, which is just horrifically, it is so insulting. I don't know how else, it's so like, oh my gosh, I just can't even. I can't even. I'm not even going to talk about that. It's just ridiculous. But that's where I think a lot of the fear, I want to say fear. They call everybody fat phobic. I'm going to call them fat suit phobic. I think a lot of the fear comes from the idea that they cannot accept that a thin person can become fat and that a fat person can become thin, that it is not inalienable or whatever, inherent. It's not an immutable, that's the right word, sorry. It's not an immutable quality to be fat. It isn't. It's very mutable. And I get it. It can be uncomfortable and it can be weird and whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think a lot of times we lose the fact that this is actually about health. And they'll just constantly say, well, you say it's about health, but it clearly isn't about health. It clearly isn't about health. Honey, you're clearly not about health. You can't use that as a weapon. You know, I get it. Some people that are trying to lose weight, they don't do it in a healthy way. Some people that encourage people to lose weight, they don't necessarily do it in a healthy way. It doesn't change the fact that you are not focused on health at all. So you cannot criticize somebody else for that. You have no place to stand. You are trying to say health at any size. You're trying to push these ideas that it doesn't matter how fat you are, that fatness isn't deadly, that all these different things. You don't care about health. You can sit there and watch My 600-Pound Life and try to act like there's not an issue. That's you. That's you. And then, oh, I mean, I'm 42. I'm in my late 30s and I'm still fine. Honey, it's, you know, it's modern day. It shouldn't be an accomplishment to live to your 40s. And that's not what a lot of us are talking about. And I did like how the Hidden Channel said, when we talk about dying young, we're talking about dying in your 50s and 60s. That's young. That's shaving off decades of life. And also, even in your 40s, the quality of life can be so much worse. Even in your 30s, it can be so much worse. I am so glad I'm getting control of this in my early 30s, but I will always sit here and say, get it together from a younger age. Don't wait. Just don't. You don't want to wait. I'm not saying to get on a crash diet and do all this crazy stuff. I'm saying just figure it out, get it under control. If you have an ED, get it under control from a young age. It often takes years. And a lot of people don't have time if they wait too long. So all I can say is, let's continue fighting this rhetoric. I just want to discuss that kind of free form on the issue of fat suits and Professor Brain Fever's strange obsession. But let me know what you guys think. Have a happy Halloween. I'm not sure. I'm thinking of posting tomorrow, but I might not. I'm going to post soon, though. I have an idea, and I'm going to spotlight somebody that I'm just like... So, I have ideas. I have a plan. But anyways, you guys, I hope you have a happy Halloween. Stay safe. Don't be too crazy. Make sure to stay on your deficit and don't have any candy at all. I'm just kidding. Anyways, you guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Have a good one.